No, it's not. I'll let everyone know about that in a moment. I was just asked about the pipes you might have noticed up around the ceiling in that room and also in the parlor. That is the sprinkler system. And that was courtesy of our fourth owner of the house, which we'll talk about in a moment. I guess I can talk about it now. The Caldwells, as I said, were here until 1940 when Grace and her brother Walter ended up selling the house. She sold it to a lady named Lassie, who operated a boarding house here for about 6 or 7 years. She rented rooms to faculty and students, primarily female, from the university, which is only about half a mile south of here. And in 1947, the Presbyterian Church came calling, and they wanted to buy the house to operate a woman's retirement home here. This would be for widows who were members of the church, and it's not a nursing home, but a true retirement home. So if they really got sick or something, they'd go elsewhere, but it would just be someplace for elderly people to live together. They operated here as the Rosanna Hughes home for 40 years, until 1987. And during their time here in the 1960s, modern fire codes required that they add a sprinkler system since it was a multi-person dwelling at that point. And so all the pipes you see along the ceiling are the sprinkler system. The walls are all plaster and lace. They're really thick. They're very hard to cut into, and it was probably thought to be a nightmare to try and cut them open, put the pipes in there, and then cover it over like we would with drywall, which is very simple to work with by comparison. So they left all of the pipes exposed. So we paint them to try and blend in as best we can, but as a museum, we need to have a sprinkler system anyway, so we're just thankful that it was already in place before we became a museum. Now here on the stairway, by the main stairs, you see more of the wonderful carvings done by the carpenters working on this house. On the posts, we see more fleur-de-lis, and we have what they considered an Egyptian papyrus motif. On the top of the post, we see faces surrounded by what looks like leaves. That comes out of the English arts and crafts movement of the late 1800s. This was called the Green Man. It was symbolizing kind of the harmony between humanity and nature. So you have a face surrounded by leaves and greenery. You often see these types of items in garden sculptures. Above us you see what are wheat shafts. That's to symbolize commerce and the plenty of the wealthy people that lived here. And you see some dragons here on this panel arching across the room. That's to symbolize international trade. Mr. Conrad was in international trade with his leather goods. He had in fact won some grand awards in a display of canned goods in Europe. So he had that installed to show that he was doing commerce in trade, not only here locally, but internationally. To my left, you see an alcove or niche, and there's a large item there. That was donated to us, so it's not something the family's own, but that space would have been used in a similar fashion to hold a large sculpture or a piece like this for display. On the wall, you notice what looks like a very old telephone. That's the intercom system for the house. They never had cords you pulled to ring a bell in the back or anything like that. And this is not original to when the Conrads moved in 1895, but was installed in the early 1900s. The small room under the stairs is a trunk room. And the families would have stored their luggage there throughout the year. And if they went traveling, they didn't drag their bags up to their room to pack. They would have a maid bring their clothes down here and pack the luggage for them. And they would leave it there. They would close this door and that locks the small room off from the rest of the house. There's an exterior door that goes to our side entrance. And they would contact the cartage company to come and pick up the luggage and carry it down to the train station or the riverfront, depending on how they were traveling. And the families didn't have to be bothered with it. I say most people say, yeah, they'd like that in their house. Above me and above the stairs, you see a painting. The painting was commissioned by the first owner, Mr. Conrad, and it was a gift for his wife, Marie. And if you notice the small boat in the right corner in the bottom, the boat has her name on it. This is a painting of their favorite vacation spot in northern Italy. It's up near Milan. It's on Lake Maggiore, and it's a place called Isola Bella, or Beautiful Island. They love to get, Mr. Conrad had some asthma issues and things like that, and allergies and whatever, and they like to go up north into what would be cooler and higher altitudes, and that helped a lot of his problems. In any case, the painting was done by an Italian painter whose Americanized name was Guy Lieber. Mr. Lieber actually came from that area of Italy, but he spent his teenage years here in Louisville. But as an adult, he then started traveling back and forth between Italy and America, and he would do large commissions like this for wealthy patrons. The painting was completed in 1899 and hung on that wall and hasn't moved since, so it's been there now 118 years. It was painted in the French trompe-l'oeil style, and trompe-l'oeil means trick of the eye. And the trick was it was painted to look like it has a large frame around the painting, but it really only has about a half-inch wood around the canvas. The painting has seen much better days. You're lucky you're feeling the cool air in this house. That air conditioning was just turned on last week. We just had it installed. So for 120 odd years of the existence of this house, there was no air conditioning, thus no humidity control. They had windows open to get air in here. So you have the large windows up there which cause sun damage to the painting. It fades it. And then with the air pollution that could be existing by the open windows and also the lack of humidity, so you control, so you've got the canvas shrinking and expanding. It has seen better days. Up by the clock, you'll notice someone about 20 years ago tried to do some cleaning of the painting. I wasn't here then. I don't know who it was they had tried to do this, but thankfully they stopped before they went very far, or were stopped in any case. But we've had a professional art restorer tell us it would cost us more than $70,000 to have that properly cleaned and restored. So it's something we'd love to do, but don't have funds to do at all. So hopefully it'll last for a while yet. We have one other fireplace here next to the stairs, you'll notice. And when the families were here, that would have been a working fireplace like the others. But you'll notice there is no chimney to this fireplace. A chimney would have destroyed the views here. No matter how you tried to hide it, it would have affected the view of the arch here and everything else. And so, much like modern day gas fireplaces, they figured out a way to vent it on a diagonal into the wall and run the venting up to the roof. So they didn't need a chimney, which you can do obviously when it's not a wood-burning fireplace. You don't need to worry about the combustibles in the same. We're going to go into the dining room next. If you feel the need to sit down, any of the chairs along the walls are fine to sit down. Now, when the family lived here, this room was the only place where meals were eaten. The kitchen was strictly a work area for the servants, so there wasn't a table there for the family to eat at. And unless a tray was being brought up to your room because you were ill, all your meals were going to be eaten here. When the Caldwells bought the house, not only were all the meals eaten here, but meals became formal events. And by that I mean even at breakfast, the gentlemen had on suits and ties, the ladies were in a dress for their morning, and nobody ever showed up here in a bathrobe. Now additionally, the Caldwells were strict believers in the idea that at a dinner table, children were to be seen and not heard. So their two children, Grace and Walter, were adults by the time they moved here. Walter was 21 and Grace was 18. But eventually they had some grandchildren that came to the house. And when those children were here, even if it were Christmas or Thanksgiving, a really happy occasion, maybe a long-lasting meal, they were to sit here and eat, but they could not speak. So that'd be pretty boring, right?
No, I like it.
Well, they had to do something to pass the time, so what they used to do was try to stare up at the chandelier and try and count all the crystals in the chandelier.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Someone once asked, what age they could start talking, and I have no idea. My guess is that when they were able to hold an adult conversation. But, you know, for some people, that means maybe when they're 10 years old, and some when they're 21 can't hold an adult conversation. So, who knows? In any case, this room originally ended where that door is. There was just a stained glass window in that wall. The room you see through that doorway was added by the church. It was added in the 1960s. The man who gave them a lot of their seed money to buy the house in 1947 was a man whose last name was Haskins. And he had a provision with the church that because he had given them all this money, if his mother were to become a widow, they would find space for her in the house. And so in the 1960s, she did become widowed and wanted to live here at that point. But by then, she had also decided that she didn't want to have to share a bedroom or a bathroom with all those other ladies living here. So she got her son to spend more money, and he built that addition to the house. And so the room through there, the large room you see through there, was her living room. It was the bathroom and the kitchen, and she actually used this dining room as her bedroom. So she had a rather large apartment for herself. Now, the nice thing was when the church made that change, they didn't take that window and toss it out or sell it or anything. They stored it here in the house. So when we became a museum, we found we still had that stained glass window. So it's now directly above where it started on the third floor. So it's in exactly the same position, only 2 stories up. So when we go up to the third floor, you'll be able to see the window that started there. You'll notice the radiators in this room. If you notice by the front door or the trunk room, the normal kind of what we all think of as a radiator, that's what this house came with, a normal accordion look. Mrs. Caldwell, during their redecorating after they bought the house, decided that in the public spaces, so this room, the parlor, and the library, she wanted something more modern, something different for the house. And so she got her husband, William, who was a mechanical engineer and fabricated metals in his factory, she got him to design and build these radiators. They have a more arts and crafts look about them. They have fins that are on an angle, so they helps get the hot air to rise from the radiator. They're still very efficient. They work really well for us in the wintertime. And to our knowledge, this is the only building in the world where you will see these radiators, because Mr. Caldwell was not in the radiator business. He only created these because his wife asked for something different here in his house. We are next going to go into this rather small room beside.
Can I touch that? I can't touch that.
Even though it's a small space, I know we'll all fit in. Is that everyone? Okay. Well, this was the butler's pantry, alternately known as a china cabinet. And of course, the families would not have kept their table set for dinner 24 hours a day the way we do. After a meal was done, things would have been cleaned up and eventually brought back in here. And so they have cabinets to store the china and other serving pieces. And this was a servants area of the house, a working part of the house. So as you come in, you notice the floors are very simple. We don't have a quilt pattern. It's back to your normal oak flooring. And that's because only the servants were going to see the space. During the meal, this door would remain closed. And so your guests are going to see a nice door with very ornate hardware. And maybe they catch a glimpse as the door was opened and they brought dishes in and out. But for the most part, this was off limits to the public. So they weren't going to waste their money on fancy flooring for the. Now, if I were to close this door, we have this nice hardware here, but if I closed it, if you look on that white door, that's the kind of hardware on the other side of the door. Again, the servants are only going to see that side of the door, so why waste money on intricate hardware? The items here, all the items you see of this beside me on either side and on this table, they're all original to the Caldwell family during their time here. We were fortunate that during that auction in 1940, family members came to the auction and bought a lot of items, sometimes at the urging of Walter and Grace, but sometimes on their own. And they kept them in their homes over the years, and when we came to museum, they were nice enough to donate them back to us so we could have them here to display for you. So the